Welcome back to the Rooftop Talks. Today I want to talk about how veganism has fundamentally changed the way I see the world. I hope that doesn't sound too snooty or pretentious, but I will go on to explain here some of the benefits, mentally speaking, some of the benefits of veganism. But first I want to say the downside to going vegan, because it is true that I do consider veganism to be a tough burden in a way. Making the connection, understanding the disgraceful way that humans treat animals, really coming to grips with it is a tough pill to swallow, and it can have negative effects on one's mental health. It certainly did on mine. There's not a lot that can shake me in my day-to-day life. I am quite a stoic person. But this, going vegan, really hurts. It continues to hurt me 2 years later, after being vegan for 2 years, because I feel empathy for the animals. The confusion they must feel, not understanding the reasons why they are mistreated in such a terrible way. The pitiful excuse for a life that they are allowed to have by their owners, by their overlords. It's a really tough thing to come to terms with. So I thought I'd get the negative out the way first, and now we can move on to the positive things. How veganism has changed the way I see the world. First of all, it connected my consumer behavior to supply chains. It made me aware of the effect I had on the world on a very real, tangible level. I started to plug into the world around me. Before that, I was separated. There would be these products that would arrive at my local shop. I didn't really think about how they got there. Or at a restaurant, a meal would arrive on my plate, and I didn't really give it a lot of thought. Nowadays, I'm acutely aware of it. I'm aware of the good parts and the bad parts. The nice thing about this is that you feel like you're given agency back. Once you're made aware of this, you then have the power to actually be a discerning customer. You can be a customer who actually can make informed choices about what you decide to fund, because it's a two-way street, right? When you buy something, you receive that thing, but you also pay the vendor financial reward for bringing you that thing. That vendor takes a profit, right? So you can choose with your money who to reward for what. For example, if you were to buy a snuff film is a film where someone is killed. Like, it's a video of someone being killed, and presumably they sell that video for money so that people can see someone getting executed. We can all see how, if that person who murders someone is then financially rewarded for filming that act, we can see how that incentivizes them to do more of it. Or just in terms of justice, they shouldn't be rewarded for such an act, right? So we understand this for snuff films, as an example, or CP could be another one, which is one that we all understand why you shouldn't pay for such terrible things. But most people just don't apply that to animals and how animals are abused. Maybe they just choose to not define it as abuse, but really they're just looking the other way, and they're choosing to be ignorant. Going vegan is a choice to not be ignorant, and it is a choice to actually use your power as a consumer to reward people who do good or people who do neutral acts, and to choose to not reward and not incentivize people who abuse others, animals in this case. It doesn't just stop at animals, it can be for humans as well. But yeah, veganism is what really made me realize that I had power as a consumer. Number two, and this is similar point, it updated my understanding of power structures and systems. Before going vegan, I was aware of the power structure and the class structure that humans have. I'd studied sociology at A level, where we talked about class, we talked about Marxism, I guess I didn't think much more of it, and that's where it ended with me. It began and ended with Marxism and class awareness. In fact, it expanded a little bit when it came to feminism, which looks at gender, and that is a power structure in itself. Then there's critical race theory, which looks at race and ethnicity and nationality as a power structure. And so it did expand my understanding of power structures, but only within humans. And Helen Keller revealed to me the power structures between disability groups, the non-disabled, and seeing that there was a power imbalance there in our society as well, a structural power imbalance. So all of these power structures were with humans. Now, animals, there are more domesticated non-human animals than there are humans. They massively outnumber humans, massively. And it's crazy that I studied this and there was no mention of animals. No mention. During my 2 years of studying sociology, they didn't make it into the textbook, despite the fact that they outnumber humans. There is this massive bottom of the pyramid of literal slaves. Literal slaves, meat slaves, dairy slaves, that didn't make it into the textbook. It's crazy. It's like billions and billions of mentally disabled, physically disabled kids, children. Animals are typically young. They don't live to that old of an age, especially not meat slaves and dairy slaves and labor slaves. So they're typically young. So they're a bit like, if I had to explain a domesticated animal to someone who had never seen one or wasn't aware of one, that's how I would bridge the understanding, bridge the gap in understanding, is by saying, think of mentally and physically disabled children. Animals are like that in a way, but of course they are afforded a tiny fraction of the compassion that a mentally and physically disabled child would receive. This is all part of making the connection, in that I've now had this realization that animals exist, and now I'm adding them into the whole thing, and I'm updating all of these power structures to understand that animals form a component of that, and they're always at the bottom, always. Making the connection is this sensation, it's the experience of realizing, oh yeah, animals exist. There are more farm animals than humans. In fact, there are more farm animals than the number of humans that have ever existed. And we routinely abuse them as part of our rituals, even though it's completely unnecessary in the modern day. And that sensation is a lot to take in. It trained me to have the courage to speak out when I saw an injustice. It pushed me to speak out. I felt compelled to speak my mind about this, because for evil to prevail, it only requires that good people say and do nothing. So it pushed me to become a contrarian when it was necessary. I'm not a contrarian recreationally. I don't play devil's advocate with people because it gives me a thrill to disagree with them. It still makes me uncomfortable, but I'm willing to do it because I see that it's necessary. I understand the necessity, and I understand that for me to be able to look at myself in the mirror every day, I have to try and do what's right. As an example of a non-animal related issue that I've spoken up on, I've spoken up about the ethics of generative AI and how that is exploitative. It's exploiting writers and artists and journalists. It's exploiting the labor of everyday people. Anyway, that's a discussion for a different time and a different place. But speaking my mind on animal rights meant that I knew what to expect. In a way, I knew what to expect when I chose to speak up about AI. I knew the kind of backlash it would have from people who stand to benefit from this exploitation. And I knew that I had to prepare myself. I had to be well informed. I had to build my conviction in the cause by reading a lot and understanding the topic. So I've improved, I suppose. I've improved at not just going along with the crowd. Now, I don't want to be a contrarian. I want to be normal. I would rather just be able to fit into the crowd, getting on with my life and doing the things that I love doing and pursuing my own selfish goals. But animal abuse is something that I cannot ignore, and it wouldn't be right for me to ignore it just for my own self-comfort. It wouldn't sit right with me to allow bullies to bully, not when I am able to say something about it. What I want instead, I still want to be normal, and I hope for a day where I can be normal by being vegan, where veganism is normal, where it is normal to not abuse animals and to not pay others to abuse animals in your name. Instead of changing my ethical principles or my behavior to just fit in, which I think would be a terribly cowardly thing to do, I want to work with other like-minded people to bring about a world where animals are not abused and there is no excuse that is acceptable for animal abuse. Now more than ever, I feel it is my duty to make the world a better place. I feel indebted to the activists who came before me, who struggled to make the world better and fairer in time for my arrival in the 1990s. And I want to pay it forward. I can see no greater purpose to my life, so I might as well pursue that one with as much as I can afford to give of myself. That's my thoughts on how veganism has changed the way that I see the world, and how it could change the way that you see the world if you choose to become a vegan. Or maybe if you are a vegan, like me, you can relate to this. But that's all I want to say for this video. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
A powerful memory, the happiest you can remember. Allow it to fill you up. Fantastic, Ginny. Just remember, your Patronus can only protect you for as long as you stay focused. Think of the happiest thing you can.
Expecto Patronum.
You're doing so well.
Expecto Patronum.